Between the silence of a mansion and the silent cry of a child, a father witnesses the brutal truth that was before him all along. What begins with hunger and neglect turns into a war for justice, revealing the dark face of invisible abuse. And when the mask falls, a father's love becomes the last frontier between pain and hope. If you enjoy stories like this, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from. A helicopter landed on the helipad of the mansion in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, at 3 in the afternoon on a rainy Thursday in March. Richard Morrison stepped out of the aircraft, his body weary from 2 weeks of intense meetings in New York City. At 42, the tech entrepreneur carried on his shoulders the weight of an empire built with sweat and determination, but also with many absences. The fine rain dampened the meticulously kept garden of the 3,000-square-meter property. Richard adjusted his Armani coat and walked towards the main entrance, eager to embrace Gabriel, his 7-year-old son. He had promised the boy he would be back in time for Friday dinner, but decided to return earlier to give him a surprise. As he crossed the entrance hall, decorated with contemporary American art, Richard found the silence hanging over the house strange. Normally, Gabriel would greet him by running down the hallway, guided by his father's familiar footsteps on the polished marble. The boy had been born with a congenital visual impairment, but this had never prevented him from recognizing every sound, every smell, every presence in the house. "Camilla?" He called out for his wife, his voice echoing through the high walls. "Gabriel?" Silence. Richard went upstairs towards his son's room, but found only the empty, overly tidy space, as if it hadn't been recently inhabited. The curtains were closed, completely blocking out the natural light. He found the absence of scattered toys that Gabriel usually left on the floor strange, especially his tactile games and braille puzzles. He went downstairs again and headed towards the kitchen, where he expected to find Mrs. Rose, the cook who had worked for the family for over 15 years. The woman always made sure to prepare special fudge balls for Gabriel, who loved to lick the chocolate spoon. It was then that he spotted a small figure through the dining room window. Gabriel was crouched near the trash bins in the service area, his small hands rummaging through plastic bags with desperate movements. The clothes he was wearing, once impeccable, were now dirty and crumpled. His light brown hair, always lovingly combed, was disheveled and greasy. Richard felt his heart race. He opened the back door and walked slowly towards his son, trying to process the scene unfolding before his eyes. "Gabriel," he called softly. The boy startled, dropping a piece of bread he had found. His blue eyes, though unable to see, turned in the direction of his father's voice with a mixture of relief and fear. "Daddy?" The voice came out shaky, almost a whisper. "You're back?" Richard knelt beside his son, ignoring the dirt that stained his Italian suit. Gabriel's small hands were thin, thinner than he remembered. The bones of his face seemed more prominent, and there was a worrying pallor to his normally rosy skin. "What are you doing here, son?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm as his stomach clenched with anxiety. Gabriel lowered his head, his fingers nervously fiddling with the hem of his dirty shirt. "I was hungry, Daddy, very hungry." "Hungry? But didn't Camilla give you lunch? And your afternoon snack?" The boy shook his head negatively, still not looking up. "Aunt Camilla said I didn't deserve to eat today. Not yesterday either. She said disobedient boys don't get food." The words hit Richard like a punch to the stomach. Camilla Foster, his wife of 3 years, had always appeared affectionate and attentive towards Gabriel, especially in his presence. The 35-year-old woman, with a degree in education, had won his heart precisely because of her apparent dedication to his son. "Gabriel, look at me," he asked, gently placing his hands on the boy's face. "What else did Aunt Camilla say?" Gabriel's lips trembled before he managed to speak. "She said you don't like me anymore because I can't see. That's why you travel so much. And that if I tell anyone about the food, you'll send me away to a place where unwanted children live." Richard felt his throat close up. He pulled Gabriel into a tight hug, feeling his son's frail body tremble against his chest. "That's not true, my love. None of that is true. Daddy loves you more than anything in this world." "But I'm scared, Daddy," Gabriel murmured against his father's shoulder. "She said if I cry or complain it will be worse. And I'm very hungry. My stomach hurts." Richard closed his eyes tightly, fighting against the wave of fury and guilt that washed over him. How hadn't he noticed? How had he allowed this to happen under his own roof? "Let's go inside, son. I'll prepare something delicious for you to eat." He carried Gabriel in his arms to the kitchen, noticing how the boy clung tightly to his neck, as if fearing he would be torn from his arms at any moment. In the refrigerator, he found yogurts and fruits. He prepared a light snack, careful not to overload the stomach of a child who had clearly been without proper food for some time. As Gabriel ate slowly, savoring each spoonful as if it were a treasure, Richard observed every movement, every expression. The boy seemed surprised to be eating without asking permission, constantly looking towards the door as if expecting someone to appear and stop him. "Gabriel, how long has this been going on?" The boy stopped eating, his face creasing with fear. "I don't know how to count the days properly, Daddy, but many, since you went on that big trip. Aunt Camilla changed when you left." Richard did the math mentally. The big trip had been to Japan almost 2 months ago. 2 weeks closing an important contract in Tokyo, followed by another 2 weeks in New York City for investor meetings. An entire month away from home, a month in which he left his most precious son in the hands of a woman he believed he loved and completely trusted. The sound of high heels in the main hallway interrupted them. Camilla was arriving. "Gabriel, go to my office," Richard whispered quickly. "There's a couch there where you can rest. Stay there until I come get you, okay?" The boy nodded and silently left through the back door, his bare feet making only a whisper on the cold floor. Camilla appeared in the kitchen moments later, wearing a navy blue designer dress and carrying shopping bags from boutiques at the Grove. Her blonde hair was perfectly brushed and her makeup impeccable. She smiled upon seeing Richard, but he noticed the smile didn't reach her brown eyes. "Darling, what a wonderful surprise," she said, placing the bags on the counter and approaching to kiss him. "I didn't expect you until tomorrow." "Where's Gabriel?" he asked directly, avoiding the kiss. "Gabriel? He must be in his room playing. You know how quiet he is." Camilla averted her gaze, busying herself with organizing her purchases. "He was in the trash, Camilla, looking for food." Camilla's hand movements hesitated for just a second before she turned to face him with a perfectly rehearsed expression of surprise. "In the trash? My God, Richard, that's terrible. He must have had one of his episodes again." "Episodes?" "Yes, darling. You know Gabriel has some behavioral issues, especially related to food. Sometimes he hides snacks in his room. Other times he pretends to be hungry even after eating. The child psychologist I consulted said it's common in visually impaired children, a way to seek attention." Richard studied his wife's face. Every word sounded rehearsed, every expression calculated. "Which psychologist?" "Dr. Henry Adams. He's doing wonderful work with Gabriel. In fact, it was he who suggested I be firmer with these eating habits. He said giving in to his whims would only worsen the situation. And why didn't you tell me about these consultations?" Camilla sighed dramatically, approaching and placing her hand on Richard's arm. "Because you already have so many worries, my love. Work, travel, business pressure. I didn't want to burden you with more problems. I thought I could handle it myself." "Gabriel said you forbade him from eating." Camilla's smile wavered for a fraction of a second before she shook her head sadly. "See? That's exactly what Dr. Adams mentioned. Gabriel invents these stories to manipulate you. He knows you feel guilty for traveling so much, so he uses it against me when you're not here. Our Gabriel is very smart, sometimes too smart for his own good." Richard felt doubt creep into his mind. Was he misinterpreting the situation? Camilla seemed so sincere, so worried. And Gabriel, despite being just a child, truly was very perceptive. "He's very thin, Camilla. I know, and I'm worried too. That's why I've scheduled an appointment with a nutritionist for next week. Dr. Adams thinks it might be a hormonal issue, related to the stress of visual impairment." Every one of Camilla's answers seemed logical, every explanation plausible. Richard remembered how articulate and convincing she had always been. It was one of the qualities that had attracted him when they met at a charity gala 4 years ago. "Where are these doctor's contacts?" "In my planner, of course." "I can show you tomorrow." "Now, why don't we go upstairs? You must be exhausted from this trip." Camilla slid her hand across Richard's chest, but he recoiled. "I'm going to stay with Gabriel a little longer." "Richard, darling," her voice acquired a slightly impatient tone, "you've just returned from an exhausting trip. Gabriel needs to learn that he can't have your exclusive attention whenever he wants. It's part of the maturing process. He's my son, Camilla, and I'm your wife, who has been trying to take care of him as best as possible while you build your empire." The words carried a subtle acidity, but Richard caught them clearly. It was the first time Camilla had shown any resentment regarding his business trips. "I'll go get him for dinner, as you wish," Camilla sighed, returning to organize her purchases. "But don't be surprised if he refuses food or invents some dramatic story to gain your sympathy." Richard left the kitchen with a heavy heart. Every paternal instinct screamed that something was deeply wrong, but Camilla's explanations planted seeds of doubt in his mind. What if Gabriel really was going through psychological problems? What if his own constant absence was causing these behaviors? He found Gabriel curled up on the leather sofa in the office, holding a small broken toy robot, his favorite since he was 3. The boy recognized his father's footsteps instantly. "Daddy? Is Aunt Camilla angry with me?" Richard sat beside his son and pulled him close. "Why do you ask that?" "Because whenever you come back from a trip, she acts differently at first. As if she's performing." The word performing echoed in Richard's mind. A 7-year-old wouldn't use that term unless he had a good reason for it. Richard woke up on the office sofa at 5 in the morning, with Gabriel still sleeping in his arms. During the night, the boy had had nightmares, waking up startled several times and whispering "please no" through tears. Each time this happened, Richard soothed him with gentle caresses of his hair and words of comfort. The Los Angeles dawn light filtered through the partially open curtains, revealing details that had gone unnoticed the night before. Gabriel had been wearing the same clothes for days. The blue shirt had yellowish stains from sweat and dried food. There were small bruises on his arms, circular marks that looked like tightly squeezed fingers. Richard felt bile rise in his throat. Carefully, he examined his son's body more closely. Besides the bruises on his arms, there were scratches on his back that became visible when his shirt moved. Gabriel was clearly underweight. His ribs stood out when he breathed. The sound of footsteps in the main hallway indicated that Camilla was awake. Richard decided it was time to take Gabriel to the hospital, regardless of his wife's explanations. "Gabriel," he whispered softly, "shall we go for a little ride?" The boy opened his blue eyes, still sleepy. "Where to, Daddy?" "I want a doctor to examine you, to make sure everything is okay." Gabriel stiffened immediately. "Are you going to take me away?" "Aunt Camilla said if I got sick, you'd have to take me to a special place." "Never, son. I'll never take you away. You'll always stay with me." Richard carried Gabriel to his room to change his clothes. Opening the closet, he found all the drawers empty, except for 2 worn-out and 2 small changes of clothes. The new clothes he had bought before the trip weren't there. "Gabriel, where are your other clothes?" "Aunt Camilla said she donated them to needy children. That I didn't need so many clothes because I don't go out anyway." Each revelation was a stab to Richard's heart. He dressed Gabriel in one of the available outfits and took him through the back to the garage, avoiding Camilla. Cedars-Sinai Medical Center was 20 minutes from the mansion. During the drive, Gabriel remained quiet, his small hands clasped firmly to his father's shirt. Richard called Mark Sterling, his personal lawyer and longtime friend. "Mark, I need you at the hospital. Now." "Richard? What happened?" "It's about Gabriel. I think he's being abused." The silence on the other end of the line lasted a few seconds. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. In the pediatric emergency room, Dr. Helen Carter, a 50-year-old woman with graying hair and an experienced gaze, examined Gabriel carefully. Richard watched every movement, every expression of the doctor. "How long has he been like this?" she asked after completing the initial examination. "I don't know. I traveled for a month and found him in this state yesterday." Gabriel remained quiet on the gurney, passively allowing the doctor to examine him. His docility was disturbing. 7-year-olds usually asked questions, showed curiosity, or at least some discomfort with strangers touching their bodies. "I'm going to order some tests," said Dr. Helen. "Complete blood count, nutritional assessment, and X-rays." "Gabriel, can you tell me if you're feeling pain anywhere?" The boy looked in his father's direction before answering. "Can I tell the truth?" The question broke Richard's heart. A child shouldn't have to ask if they can tell the truth. "You always can, son. My stomach hurts a lot. And sometimes my arms hurt where Aunt Camilla squeezes." Dr. Helen exchanged a significant look with Richard. Gabriel, does Aunt Camilla squeeze your arms often? When she gets angry with me. She says I shouldn't scream, otherwise the neighbors will hear. Mark arrived when Gabriel was having his tests done. He found Richard pacing nervously in the hallway, his hands trembling with suppressed anger. How is he? Malnourished, with bruises, scratches. The doctor said they are clear signs of abuse. Mark, how did I not see this? How did I let this happen? Stop blaming yourself now. Let's focus on protecting Gabriel. Dr. Helen returned with the results an hour later, her expression grave. Mr. Morrison, I need to be direct. Gabriel has moderate malnutrition, anemia, and some bruises that are consistent with physical aggression. X-rays show a consolidated fracture in his left wrist that was not properly treated. I am legally obligated to make a report to Child Protective Services. Richard sat heavily in the hospital's plastic chair. A fracture? When did that happen? By the looks of it, about 6 weeks ago. It was a natural consolidation process without medical intervention. 6 weeks, exactly when he was in Japan, closing the biggest contract in his company's history. While he was celebrating his professional success in Michelin-starred restaurants in Tokyo, his son was suffering in silence. Doctor, there's something else, Gabriel said shyly. Can I tell you? Of course, dear. Aunt Camilla gave me medicine to sleep many times, medicine that made me very tired and unable to wake up. Dr. Helen frowned. What kind of medicine, Gabriel? I don't know. It was liquid, bitter. She mixed it in milk and said it was a vitamin. Richard felt his legs weaken. Sedating a child. That would explain why Gabriel always seemed sleepy when they spoke via video call during his trips. We'll do a toxicology screen as well, the doctor decided. Mr. Morrison, I recommend that Gabriel stay admitted tonight for observation and to complete all necessary tests. No! Gabriel stirred on the gurney. Please, Daddy, don't leave me alone. She might come get me. Calm down, son. Daddy will stay here with you. Mark approached. Richard, I need to speak to you privately. They went out into the hallway. The lawyer maintained a serious expression. I will request an emergency protective order. Gabriel cannot return home while Camilla is there. And we will need all possible evidence. What kind of evidence? Home security cameras, employee testimonies, previous medical records. Everything that proves what's happening. Richard remembered something important, the security system. I installed cameras in every room of the house last year, after some burglaries in the area. Did Camilla know about the cameras? Yes, but maybe she didn't know they were recorded on an external server. They are automatically saved for 60 days. Mark smiled for the first time that day. This might be exactly what we need. While Gabriel rested under the effect of a mild sedative, Richard and Mark headed to the mansion to retrieve the recordings. Camilla greeted them at the door wearing a pink silk robe and appearing to have cried. Richard, thank God. Where have you been? I woke up and couldn't find you anywhere. I was desperate, thinking Gabriel had run away again. Run away? Yes, darling. I didn't tell you yesterday not to worry you further, but Gabriel has tried to run away from home several times in recent weeks. That's why I locked his bedroom door at night. To ensure his safety. Mark watched Camilla carefully, mentally noting every word. I need to access the security system, Richard said coldly. Of course, love. But why? Did something happen? Gabriel is hospitalized. The doctors found signs of abuse. Camilla's reaction was perfect. Her face paled. She brought a hand to her chest in shock, her eyes filled with tears. My God. That's terrible. Poor little thing. I always suspected he was hurting himself. Dr. Adams warned me about self-destructive behaviors in visually impaired children. Did you show these suspicions to anyone? Do you have medical reports? Mark asked. Camilla hesitated for just a second. Of course. They're all organized in my office. I can go get them. As she went upstairs, Richard accessed the monitoring system in the house's basement. The recordings were all there, organized by date and camera. He started checking the last 2 months, fast-forwarding through the footage until he found something relevant. What he saw made him nauseous. 3 weeks ago, Camilla appeared in Gabriel's room at 2 in the morning, waking him abruptly and dragging him by the arm into the hallway. The child cried, but she covered his mouth tightly. In another video, Gabriel tried to open the refrigerator and she pulled him violently, making him fall to the floor. But the most disturbing recording showed Camilla mixing something into a glass of milk while smiling at the camera, as if she knew she was being filmed and didn't care. "Find anything?" Mark asked. "Much more than I expected." Camilla returned with an organized folder containing apparently detailed medical reports, prescriptions, and notes on Gabriel's behavior. Everything seemed professional and convincing. "Here are all the documents. Dr. Adams has been seeing Gabriel monthly." Mark quickly examined the papers. They looked authentic. "I'll have to verify this information with the doctor." "Of course. He'll be happy to clarify any doubts." Richard remained focused on the recordings when he found something that made him stop breathing. In the video, Camilla was on the phone, her back to the living room camera, but the audio was clear. "Yes, he's more naive than I thought. The child is problematic, which makes my job easier. As for the will, I managed to get him to include an inheritance clause for me, in case of Gabriel's guardianship." The conversation continued, revealing a cold and calculated plan. Camilla wasn't just abusing Gabriel. She was manipulating the entire situation for her own benefit. "Mark," Richard called out in a hoarse voice, "you need to see this." As the lawyer watched the recordings, Richard observed Camilla upstairs through the master bedroom camera. She was on the phone again, and her relaxed posture contrasted drastically with the dramatic performance she had given moments before. "Yes, doctor," she was saying. "My husband is suspicious. We'll need to accelerate the plan. Gabriel is in the hospital. It's the perfect opportunity to claim he's mentally unstable." Mark recorded everything on his phone. "Richard, we have enough evidence to act. But we need to be strategic. Camilla is clearly more dangerous and manipulative than we imagined. What do we do now? First, we ensure Gabriel is completely protected. Then we gather all the evidence and present it to the court. But be careful. She's noticed you suspect something." As if confirming Mark's words, Camilla appeared at the top of the stairs with a completely different expression. The worried and loving face had been replaced by a cold and calculated gaze. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked, her voice devoid of its previous sweetness. Richard and Mark exchanged a tense look. The game of disguises was over, and now a real battle for Gabriel's safety began. The silence that settled in the room was broken by Richard's cell phone ringing. Gabriel was waking up at the hospital and asking for his father. The call gave Richard and Mark a chance to leave the mansion without directly confronting Camilla. "I need to go back to the hospital," Richard said, quickly saving the video files onto a flash drive. "Of course, darling," Camilla replied, returning to her sweet tone, but her eyes remained cold. "I'll prepare his room for when you return." In the car on the way to the hospital, Mark made several calls organizing the legal strategy. Richard could barely concentrate on the conversation, mentally replaying the images he had seen. How could he have been so blind? How had he not realized that the woman who shared his bed was capable of such cruelty? Gabriel was awake when they arrived, playing with a small tactile puzzle that a nurse had lent him. Upon hearing his father's familiar footsteps, his face lit up. "Daddy, you're back. I promised I wouldn't leave your side, didn't I? The doctor said I can eat whenever I want. She won't get angry." Dr. Helen, who was checking Gabriel's IV drip, shook her head sadly. "Never, Gabriel. Here you can eat whenever you feel hungry." Mark approached the gurney. "Gabriel, I'm Uncle Mark, your father's friend. Can I talk to you?" The boy nodded shyly. "Do you remember other people in the house who might have seen when Aunt Camilla got angry with you?" Gabriel thought for a moment. "Aunt Rose sometimes heard me crying. Once she knocked on my bedroom door, but Aunt Camilla said I was grounded and told her to leave." "Does Mrs. Rose still work at the house?" Richard asked. "I don't know. I haven't seen her in a long time. Aunt Camilla said she went on a trip." Mark wrote everything down in his notepad. "And at school, Gabriel, did anyone ask about how you were feeling?" "Teacher Anna always asks. I like her. But Aunt Camilla said that if I told anything at school, they would take me out of the special class and put me in a school where no one helps blind children." Richard felt another pang in his chest. Gabriel loved the specialized school where he studied. The threat of taking him out of there was particularly cruel. "Gabriel," Mark said gently, "would you like to never have to be alone with Aunt Camilla again?" Gabriel's eyes filled with tears of relief. "Can I stay just with Daddy?" "We'll do everything to make that happen." While Gabriel rested, Richard called the school. Anna Beatrice Sutton, the specialized teacher for visual impairment, answered immediately. "Mr. Richard, so good to hear your voice. I've been worried about Gabriel. He's been absent a lot in recent weeks. Teacher Anna, I need to speak with you urgently. It's about Gabriel. Did something happen? I knew something was wrong. Gabriel has changed a lot in recent months. Can you meet us tonight? It's very important." "Of course. I can come to the hospital at 7. Mark was also making his calls. He got Mrs. Rose's address and found out she hadn't traveled. She had been abruptly fired a month ago when she questioned why Gabriel was always locked in his room. "Richard, we need to talk to her today. And also investigate this Dr. Henry Adams." At 5 in the afternoon, they found Mrs. Rose in her simple house in Greenwich Village. The 60-year-old woman who had cared for Gabriel since he was a baby began to cry as soon as she saw them. "Mr. Richard, I tried to warn you, but Mrs. Camilla intercepted all my calls. She said you were too busy to be bothered." "What did you see, Mrs. Rose?" "Many bad things, sir. Gabriel went days without eating properly. She only gave him crumbs as if it were a punishment. And those medicines—" "What medicines?" "Some pills she dissolved in water. Gabriel was too sleepy, it wasn't natural. Once I asked what it was, and she said they were vitamins prescribed by the doctor." Mrs. Rose wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. "But what worried me most were the screams at night. Gabriel would cry, beg for food, and she would yell at him. She said terrible things, that he was a burden, that you were tired of him. Why didn't you seek help?" "I tried, sir. I went to the school to talk to Teacher Anna, but the next day Mrs. Camilla fired me. She said I was making up stories because I wanted money." Mark took notes of everything. "Rose, would you be willing to give an official testimony?" "Of course." "That boy is like a grandson to me. I haven't been able to sleep properly for a single day since I left that house." Mrs. Rose opened a drawer and took out a small vial. "I kept this. I found it in Mrs. Camilla's bedroom trash. It was a bottle of medication prescribed for severe anxiety in adult dosage. The name on the prescription was Dr. Henry Adams." "She was giving this to Gabriel?" Richard asked, horrified. "I can't say for sure, but the bottle was empty, and she only took care of Gabriel. And, sir, there's one more thing." Mrs. Rose hesitated. "Please speak." "Mrs. Camilla received strange visitors when you traveled. Men in suits who stayed in her office until late. Once I overheard her talking about documents, about inheritance. She mentioned Gabriel several times." Richard's stomach churned. The puzzle pieces began to fit together in a terrifying way. They returned to the hospital in time to find Teacher Anna arriving. She was a young woman, about 30, with her brown hair tied back and wearing glasses. She carried a folder full of documents. "Mr. Richard, I've brought everything I have on Gabriel. Progress reports, drawings he made, behavioral notes." Anna opened the folder on the hospital cafeteria table. "In the last 2 months, Gabriel changed completely. Before, he was a cheerful, participatory child. He asked questions, laughed with his classmates. But after the January holidays, he came back quiet, withdrawn." She showed drawings Gabriel had made in tactile braille. "These are his latest productions. Before he drew family home toys. Now he only makes dark shapes, solitary figures." "Did you try to talk to him?" "Several times. But Gabriel always said he was fine, that it was just tiredness. Once I asked if he was eating well at home, and he started to cry. When I asked why, he said he couldn't talk about food." Anna turned a few pages. "There's more. Gabriel started fainting at school. 3 times in 15 days. We took him to the school doctor, who said it was severe hypoglycemia, lack of blood sugar due to inadequate nutrition." "Why didn't you contact us?" "We tried. We called the house several times, but a woman always answered, identifying herself as his mother. She said Gabriel had eating problems at home too, that he was undergoing medical treatment." Anna took a deep breath before continuing. 2 weeks ago, something happened that worried me greatly. Gabriel arrived at school with his arm roughly bandaged, clearly injured. When I asked what had happened, he said he had fallen out of bed. But the story didn't make sense. Why not? Gabriel knows his house perfectly. He moves with complete confidence through familiar environments. It's impossible for him to have fallen out of his own bed. Mark interrupted. "Teacher, did you ever meet Mrs. Camilla personally?" "Yes, she came to pick up Gabriel a few times. Always very polite, well-dressed, spoke affectionately about him in front of me, but Gabriel became tense when she arrived. He didn't show the natural joy that children have when they see their mother. And once, when she thought I wasn't looking, I saw her squeeze his arm very hard. Anna flipped through a few more pages. Oh, and there's this too. Mrs. Camilla approached me a month ago with a strange proposal. What proposal? She offered a significant donation to our school, $50,000, in exchange for what she called pedagogical discretion. She said Gabriel was going through a difficult phase and that it would be better if I didn't report small incidents, so as not to worry his father, who already had many responsibilities. Richard's blood boiled. And you accepted? Obviously not. I was indignant. I said my responsibility was for Gabriel's well-being, not money. She left the school very angry. Anna closed the folder. Mr. Richard, I should have insisted more. I should have looked for other ways to contact you. Gabriel is a special boy, intelligent, affectionate. Seeing him fade away little by little was torturous for me. It's not your fault, Mark said. Camilla is a professional manipulator. At this moment, Dr. Helen approached the table. Mr. Richard, the toxicology test results are in. Gabriel had traces of benzodiazepines in his blood, anxiety medication in an adult dose. For a child of his weight, it could have been fatal. The world spun around Richard. Camilla wasn't just abusing Gabriel, she was slowly poisoning him. Doctor, Mark said, is this evidence of attempted poisoning? Without a doubt. No 7-year-old child, especially one with a visual impairment, should never have access to these medications. Someone was deliberately administering them. Anna covered her mouth, horrified. My God, that explains why Gabriel was always sleepy during afternoon classes. Richard stood up abruptly. Mark, how long do we need to get emergency custody? With this evidence, we can request it today. The duty judge will certainly grant it. And this Dr. Adams? I'm already investigating. I suspect he's either an accomplice or doesn't even exist. 2 hours later, Mark returned to the hospital with the court order. Gabriel was under Richard's protective custody, and Camilla was prohibited from approaching the boy or the property until further notice. Daddy, Gabriel asked when Richard explained they wouldn't be going home for now, Aunt Camilla can't hurt me anymore? Never again, son. Never again. Gabriel sighed deeply, a sound of relief that broke Richard's heart. Can I ask a question? Of course. Why was she mean to me if I never did anything bad? Richard hugged his son, not knowing how to explain that sometimes there are people who hurt others for no reason. That evil exists even where there should be love. Sometimes, son, some people don't know how to truly love. But that's not your fault. You are perfect exactly as you are. Gabriel snuggled into his father's arms. Now I can eat when I'm hungry. Always forever. And will you stay with me? Always forever. Outside the room, Mark talked with Dr. Helen about the next steps. Gabriel would need psychological, nutritional, and medical follow-up for months. The physical scars would heal, but the emotional ones would take longer. But for the first time in months, Gabriel slept peacefully without nightmares, knowing he was protected in the arms of someone who truly loved him. 3 weeks had passed since Gabriel had been removed from the mansion. The boy was recovering in a penthouse Richard temporarily rented in Santa Monica, close to the hospital and school. During this period, Gabriel had gained 2 kilograms, his dark circles diminished, and most importantly, he had started smiling again. The apartment had been specially adapted for him. Richard installed tactile handrails, arranged the furniture safely, and created a small office where he worked while supervising his son's recovery. For the first time in years, he was putting Gabriel as his absolute priority. On the morning of the court hearing, Gabriel was nervous. He didn't fully understand what would happen, but he knew it was something important about his future. "Daddy, do I have to speak in front of the judge?" he asked while eating breakfast, something he now did with a voracious appetite, as if making up for all the lost meals. "Only if you want to, son. But the judge might ask you some questions. She's a good person who just wants to make sure you're safe." "And will Aunt Camilla be there?" Richard hesitated. The law required Camilla to be present to defend herself against the accusations. "Yes, but you don't have to talk to her. Daddy will be by your side the whole time." Gabriel nodded, trusting his father completely. At the Los Angeles Superior Court, the atmosphere was tense. Mark had prepared a complete dossier with all the evidence, video recordings, medical reports, testimonies from Mrs. Rose and teacher Anna, school records, and toxicology results. Camilla arrived accompanied by an expensive lawyer, wearing a conservative black suit and with an expression of a misunderstood victim. She had lost weight in recent weeks and cultivated a fragile appearance, clearly calculated to elicit sympathy. Judge Marcia Foster, an experienced 55-year-old woman, known for her seriousness in cases involving children, called the hearing. This case involves serious accusations of abuse against Gabriel Morrison, a 7-year-old minor with a visual impairment. Mr. Richard Morrison alleges that his wife, Mrs. Camilla Foster, subjected the child to neglect, physical aggression, and improper administration of medication. Camilla's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client vehemently refutes these accusations." Mrs. Camilla dedicated 3 years of her life to caring for Gabriel, a child with complex special needs. Mr. Richard's allegations are a result of paternal guilt for his frequent absences and an attempt to shift responsibility. Mark responded immediately. "Your Honor, we have physical, medical, and video evidence that systematically proves the abuse. We request that they be presented to the court." The first evidence shown was Gabriel's medical report. Dr. Helen, called as a witness, explained the findings in detail. Gabriel presented with moderate malnutrition, anemia, bruises in different stages of healing, and a wrist fracture that did not receive proper medical treatment. Toxicology tests revealed the presence of benzodiazepines at dangerous levels for a child. Dr. Helen, Camilla's lawyer, asked, "Is it possible for a visually impaired child to get hurt more frequently due to their condition?" "Small scratches and abrasions, yes. But the bruises Gabriel presented were circular, consistent with adult finger pressure, and the wrist fracture required significant force. It's not the result of a common household accident." The judge observed everything attentively. "And what about the medications found in the child's blood?" "Thirsty. Benzodiazepines should never be administered to children without strict medical supervision. At the dosage found, Gabriel could have suffered severe respiratory depression." Camilla whispered something to her lawyer, who stood up again. "Your Honor, my client only administered vitamins prescribed by Dr. Henry Adams, a child psychiatrist who was attending to Gabriel." Mark smiled discreetly. "Your Honor, we investigated this supposed Dr. Henry Adams. We discovered that he does not exist. There is no record of any doctor with that name in the California Medical Board. The documents presented by Mrs. Camilla are forgeries." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Camilla visibly paled. "Furthermore," Mark continued, "we have video recordings that show Mrs. Camilla deliberately abusing Gabriel." The images were displayed on a screen. The silence in the courtroom was sepulchral as everyone watched Camilla denying Gabriel food, dragging him down the hallway, and mixing substances into his drink. But it was the audio recording of the phone conversation that caused the greatest impact. Camilla's voice echoed through the room. "Yes, he's more naive than I thought. The child is problematic, which makes my job easier. As for the will, I managed to get him to include an inheritance clause for me in case of Gabriel's guardianship." Richard closed his eyes, reliving the pain of betrayal. Camilla didn't love him, she never had. Everything was an elaborate plan to gain access to his fortune. Camilla's lawyer tried one last card. "Your Honor, these videos could have been edited. It's easy to manipulate digital evidence nowadays." Mark was prepared. "We requested an independent technical expert who confirmed the complete authenticity of the recordings. Furthermore, we have eyewitnesses." Mrs. Rose was called to testify. With a firm but emotional voice, she recounted everything she had witnessed. "Your Honor, I cared for that boy since he was a baby. I saw how happy, clever, and affectionate he was. In the last weeks I worked at the house, Gabriel was wasting away. He lost weight, was sleepy all the time, cried secretly. Did you try to intervene?" "Yes, ma'am. Several times I questioned Mrs. Camilla about his food, about the medicines she gave him. She always had an explanation, always said it was medical advice. But my grandmother's heart knew something was wrong." Teacher Anna also testified, presenting Gabriel's drawings and reporting the drastic change in his behavior. Gabriel was one of the most participatory children in the class. In recent months, he became withdrawn, unfocused. He started fainting due to hypoglycemia. When I asked about his eating, he cried. Then came the moment everyone feared and awaited. Gabriel would be heard by the judge. Judge Marcia addressed the boy in a gentle voice. "Gabriel, do you know why we're here today?" "Yes, ma'am." "It's to decide if I can stay with my daddy. Would you like to stay with your daddy?" "Very much." Gabriel's voice was firm, without hesitation. "Gabriel, when you were at home with Aunt Camilla, how did you feel?" The boy took a deep breath before answering. "Scared. Always scared. Scared to make noise, scared to ask for food, scared to cry." "Why were you scared to ask for food?" "Because Aunt Camilla would get very angry. She said I ate too much, that I was costing Daddy too much money. And when I asked anyway, she would lock me in my room." The judge continued gently. "Gabriel, did Aunt Camilla ever hurt you?" Gabriel hesitated, looking in his father's direction. "You can tell the truth, son," Richard encouraged. "Yes, she would squeeze my arm when I cried. And once she pushed so hard that I hit the floor and my wrist hurt a lot." "And the medicines she gave you?" She said it was a vitamin, but it was bitter and made me very tired. Sometimes I couldn't even wake up to go to the bathroom. Camilla couldn't take it anymore." She stood up abruptly, her self-control finally breaking. "These are lies. He's making it all up because you manipulated him against me. I took care of this defective boy when no one else wanted him." The silence that followed was deafening. The mask had completely fallen. "Defective boy," the judge repeated, her voice icy. Camilla realized what she had said, but it was too late. I didn't mean that. I'm nervous. All of this is very unfair." But the words were already recorded. Gabriel lowered his head, and Richard felt a murderous fury rise in his chest. Mark stood up calmly. "Your Honor, we have just witnessed the true personality of the respondent." Her own words reveal the contempt she feels for Gabriel. Camilla's lawyer tried to control the damage. "My client is under extreme emotional pressure." "There is no excuse," the judge interrupted severely. "To refer to any child, especially one under your care, in such a derogatory manner." The hearing continued for another 2 hours, but the outcome was already clear. The evidence was overwhelming, and Camilla's last outburst had sealed her fate. During the recess, Richard knelt beside Gabriel. "You were very brave today." "Son, Daddy, why did she call me defective?" "Am I defective?" Richard felt tears burn his eyes. "No, my love. You are perfect. You see things that people like her will never be able to see. You see with your heart." When the hearing resumed, Judge Marcia delivered her decision. After analyzing all the evidence presented, this court determines that the accusations against Mrs. Camilla Foster are substantiated. The evidence of physical abuse, nutritional neglect, improper administration of medication, and psychological abuse is irrefutable. Camilla clung to the table, her face completely pale. "Therefore, I grant permanent custody of Gabriel Morrison to his father, Mr. Richard Morrison. Mrs. Camilla is permanently prohibited from having any contact with the minor." The judge continued. "Furthermore, I order that the case be forwarded to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. The evidence suggests crimes of bodily harm, abuse, and possible attempted poisoning." Camilla finally collapsed, shouting incoherent accusations against Richard, against Gabriel, against everyone who conspired against her. Security guards had to remove her from the room as she shrieked that everything was unfair. Gabriel clung to his father. "It's over, Daddy. She can't hurt me anymore. It's over, son. Forever." Outside the courthouse, Mrs. Rose and teacher Anna waited anxiously. When they learned the outcome, both cried with relief. "Can I give my boy a hug?" Mrs. Rose asked. Gabriel ran into the arms of the woman who had always loved him like a grandmother. "Aunt Rose, I missed you." "Was me too, my grandson. We'll never be separated again." Teacher Anna approached. "Gabriel, I'm very proud of you. You were very brave." "Teacher, can I go back to school now?" "Of course." "Your friends miss you." That night, for the first time in months, Gabriel slept knowing he was completely safe. There would be no more nightmares, no more hunger, no more fear. Richard watched his son sleep, silently promising that he would never again let anything bad happen to him. He had learned to see not just with his eyes, but with his heart, exactly as Gabriel had always done. 6 months after the court hearing, Richard and Gabriel moved to a new house in Pasadena, a cozy 2-story home with a large garden and close to Gabriel's school. The Beverly Hills mansion had been sold. Richard could no longer look at that place without reliving the horrors Gabriel had suffered there. The new house was specially designed for Gabriel. Tactile handrails guided them through the hallways. The furniture had rounded corners, and there was a special room full of Braille books, sound-emitting toys, and a small piano that Gabriel had learned to play. The boy showed a natural talent for music, a discovery that filled Richard with pride. Mrs. Rose returned to work with them, now not only as a cook, but as a housekeeper and Gabriel's second grandmother. She had refused to accept any salary increase, saying that caring for the boy was her joy, not an obligation. "Mr. Richard," she said one September morning, "Gabriel is asking if he can invite his school friends to a birthday party." Gabriel would turn 8 the following week. It would be his first birthday party since everything had changed in their lives. "Of course he can. We'll throw the biggest party Los Angeles has ever seen," Richard replied, watching Gabriel in the garden playing with a guide dog they had adopted, a golden retriever named Beethoven. "Daddy!" Gabriel shouted, running towards his father's voice with Beethoven by his side. Beethoven learned to fetch my musical ball. The dog had been a gift from teacher Anna, who now visited Gabriel regularly. Not just as an educator, but as a family friend. She had become the coordinator of a new project Richard was funding. "Gabriel," Richard said, "I need to talk to you about something important." They sat on the garden swing, Beethoven lying at Gabriel's feet. "Remember when we talked about helping other children who went through similar things to what you did?" Gabriel nodded seriously. "Yes, Daddy. Children who get scared and hungry like I used to." "Exactly. Daddy decided to create a foundation to help these children, and I'd like you to help me choose the name." Gabriel thought for a moment. "How about the See With Your Heart Foundation? Because sometimes people don't see when children are suffering, but if they look with their hearts, they will." Richard was moved by his son's wisdom. "It's perfect, Gabriel. Absolutely perfect." The See With Your Heart Foundation was officially inaugurated 2 months later at an event that brought together authorities, business leaders, and child rights activists. Gabriel, now 8 years old and visibly stronger and more confident, gave a short speech. "My name is Gabriel, and I want to speak to the children watching," he said into the microphone, his voice clear and determined. "If someone is being mean to you, if they're hurting you or not letting you eat, it's not your fault. You are not defective. You are special, and there are good people who will help you." The audience was silent, many with tears in their eyes. "And for the adults," Gabriel continued, "pay attention to children. Sometimes they can't speak, but you can see if you look closely, with your heart." The foundation started by assisting 20 children per month. Mrs. Rose joined the team as a special care supervisor, using her decades of experience caring for children. Teacher Anna became the pedagogical director, developing special methods for traumatized children. Mark, who had refused to charge fees for the case, agreed to be the foundation's legal advisor, helping other families navigate the child protection system. In December, Gabriel received a special visit at school. It was Judge Marcia Foster, who had decided to personally meet the boy whose case had deeply touched her heart. "Gabriel, I came to thank you for your courage," she said. "Your testimony helped not only you but other children too. Camilla was sentenced to 8 years in prison, and her case is being studied to improve child protection laws." Gabriel listened attentively. "Your Honor, may I ask a question?" Of course. "Will Aunt Camilla learn to be good in prison?" The innocent question made the magistrate reflect on the concept of redemption. "I hope so, Gabriel. I hope she learns about the consequences of hurting innocent people. Hope she learns to see with her heart, too." Gabriel's capacity for forgiveness continued to surprise everyone around him. On Christmas Eve, the house in Pasadena was decorated with tactile ornaments that Gabriel could feel and appreciate. There were garlands with different textures, musical bells scattered throughout the house, and a Christmas tree with ornaments that made sounds when touched. "Daddy," Gabriel said as he helped arrange the presents under the tree, "can I tell you a secret?" "You always can. Before, when I was sad, I imagined what it would be like to have a real father, one who would stay with me, who wouldn't always travel, who would protect me." Richard felt a pang in his heart, remembering his past absences. And now I know I always had a real father. You just needed to learn to see me. Gabriel, don't be sad, Daddy. Everything that happened was for you to learn, and now you can teach other fathers too. Gabriel's wisdom continued to be a constant source of admiration for Richard. On New Year's, they started a new tradition. Instead of fireworks, which Gabriel couldn't see, they organized a party with live music in the garden. Gabriel played the piano for the guests, a song he had composed called Light of the Heart. During the performance, Richard watched his son. Gabriel had grown not just physically but emotionally. The frail and frightened boy had transformed into a confident, generous and full-of-life child. After the guests left, father and son sat in the garden under the stars. Daddy, do you think our story can help other people? Why do you ask that? Mrs. Rose said there are many families going through similar things. That perhaps if they knew how everything can turn out well in the end, they would have more hope. Richard smiled. Gabriel always thought of others. You're right, son. Our story shows that even in the most difficult situations, love always wins, and that every child deserves to be protected and loved. Exactly. Gabriel snuggled into his father's shoulder. Daddy, do you know my biggest secret now? What is it? I never felt invisible when you were with me. Even when I was little and you traveled a lot, I always knew you loved me. You just didn't know how to show it properly. Tears streamed freely down Richard's face. I love you more than anything in this world. Gabriel, I love you too, Daddy, forever. As Gabriel fell asleep in his arms, Richard reflected on the journey they had traveled. The pain, fear, and betrayal had given way to love, trust, and hope. Gabriel had taught him that true sight didn't depend on the eyes, but on the heart. The See With Your Heart Foundation continued to grow, already assisting over 200 children and their families. Every child saved was a victory. Every family reunited was a miracle. Gabriel, now 9 years old, had become a small ambassador for the cause, visiting schools and speaking about resilience and hope. His story inspired children and adults across the country. Dear listeners, Gabriel said during an interview on a local radio station, his voice mature for his age, our story shows that even when everything seems lost, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. If you are going through difficult times, don't give up. There are good people who will help you. The emotional presenter asked, Gabriel, what message do you leave for the people listening to us? See with your heart. Pay attention to each other. And remember, every child deserves to be loved and protected. If you've seen our story and been touched, share it with others. Perhaps it will help someone who needs hope. Gabriel paused, as if carefully considering his words. And if you want to follow more stories like ours, stories of people who overcame difficulties and found happiness, don't forget to subscribe to the channels that tell these stories. Leave a like to show that you believe in the power of love. And comment on your own experiences. Sometimes sharing our story can help someone going through the same thing. The presenter smiled. You heard it, folks. Gabriel invites us to be part of a community that believes in transformation through love and care for others. That's right, Gabriel concluded. Together, we can see and protect all children. Thank you for listening, and don't forget, you can make a difference in someone's life too. Richard, listening from the control room, felt his heart swell with pride. Gabriel had transformed his pain into purpose, his experience into wisdom, his suffering into strength to help others. That night, at home, Gabriel asked, Daddy, do you think our story will help many people? I'm sure it will, son. And every person we help will help others too. That's how love multiplies. Gabriel smiled, holding the restored toy robot that still slept with him every night. So our story will never end, right, Daddy? No, Gabriel. Our story is just the beginning.